Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, The Offering Stone. The first page. The second and third page. The last page. A few years ago, a couple of hikers came across an abandoned town. Aside from a few things such as anvils and broken signs, there was hardly anything to be found in the town. The group came across a dusty book in one of the cottages. I have seen many things through these tired, old eyes. I have seen men leave home, never to return. I have seen children grow into the men that will never return. Such is the life of a villager. In these times, there are days when I wonder when this oppressive time will end, when this fog of corruption that hangs over this holy war will disperse, that poor mothers and wives widowed and scared, wondering who will be taken next. Sometimes I wish that I could tell them. Sometimes I wish I could show them the stone that has given me the protection all these years. Maybe it is the time now. Perhaps there is nothing to lose. Dear reader, you wish to know of the stone that kept me from being swept into that dreadful river of war. I will tell you, but know this, reader, some things are best left untouched. If you fear for your life or hold doubt in your heart, do not go looking for what you do not understand. Assuming that you found this where I had laid it to rest, you must find the path to the forest that not even crows nest in. You must then travel down that path until you reach the fork. I warn you that if you take the left, you will be lost forever, traveling down an endless path, with not even the sound of wind to keep you company. If you chose the right, then you will be faced with more hardships to reach your destination. At this point, you cannot turn back, reader. You are now committed to this path. You cannot abandon it. Upon taking the right path, continue along it. Until it ends, there will be a great oak, with its arms stretched far into the sky. Lay any weapons you have against the tree after you have disarmed yourself. On the bark there will appear the words, "What is it that thou wish to know?" If you ask it the path to take, the tree will give you a final chance to return to where you started, at the price of losing your sight. Should you refuse this final chance to turn back, you will be directed the proper direction to take. Be warned, if you attempt to retrieve your weapons, you shall be struck down by a great limb from the tree. Continue straight from where the tree directed you. If you shall wander from the path, you will never see the end of the forest. You will soon find a set of stairs. Walk up these steps and you shall find the offering stone. The stone I had visited myself so long ago. You must stand in silence until the stone begins to shine, and the hole it bears begins to whisper. It will whisper words that man cannot repeat. It shall ask you what you have come for. Answer true and hold no doubt in your answer. The stone shall ask for your offering, which you must offer something of great value to yourself. Money will not please the stone. You must give something that money cannot replace. If you offer your loyalty, the stone shall turn you to one of its shades when you are to die, forced to carry out the stone's bidding, unable to control your own mind. If you offer your soul, the stone shall feast upon your deathbed. Though if, like me, you offer the stone your guardianship to the stone, it will give you your wish. But in return you must return the stone in exactly a year. You shall then be taken back to where you started, and marked by the stone. I hold this stain on my hand, and have for the past 20 years kept alive only by the fear that grips my very soul. They will come for me tonight. The shades the stone does not allow one to cheat it. I tried running away. I tried hiding. I tried to fight off the shades, but one can only succeed for so long tonight. I shall leave this book to rest here next to my bed. I shall go into those woods and take that left path to finally see for myself what there is to be seen from where I return. If they are to follow me through that path, I shall not let them take me without a fight. Dear reader, if you wish to travel down the same path as me, know this: nothing comes without consequences. The book is not signed or dated, but from the wording, Holy War, one could assume it is from around the 1200s. The second story, the Doppelganger. My eyelids parted slowly, and I was in my parents' house, lying on my back over the comforter on my bed and staring at the grey acoustic textured ceiling. Immediately there was a sharp throbbing in my temples, and I felt like something was very off, like I wasn't really in my house. Upon closer inspection of my room, I realized that I was indeed in my parents' house, but that it was slightly different in some ways. The bedroom wall was just a shade lighter than the dark purple I remembered, and none of my belongings were anywhere in sight, just the basic furniture and the painted walls. I couldn't find my cameras, or my jewelry box, or any of my gaming consoles. Suddenly, I was overcome with the realization that it was almost unbearably cold in the room. I shut my eyes as tight as I could manage and shrieked as a colossal wave of freezing water rushed over me. But when I opened them, I could find no such water, but I had just felt. Was my mind playing tricks on me? My clothing felt familiarly heavy, but it wasn't the slightest bit wet. I could very clearly see my breath and could hardly keep myself from violently shivering. When I wasn't exhaling, I had to keep my mouth closed so that my teeth wouldn't clatter together. Strangely enough, I could not find a single article of clothing in the room to keep me warm, other than the sheer, white Barbador-style nightgown I was already wearing. Eventually, I just resolved to be cold because it couldn't be helped, and I left my room to explore the rest of but not my house. I was startled to find that each room, closet, and hallway that I poked my head into was just a blank slate. No color, no furniture, no possessions, no people, no nothing. It was then that I started to feel legitimately frightened. I darted around, flinging open each door and calling out for someone, anyone that could possibly be in the house. But after scoping out the entire place and finding not one soul, I had to admit to myself that I was completely and utterly alone, and what a terrible feeling it was. Unfortunately, although I tried to give myself hope, the outside world held no promise for me either. As far I could see in every direction, there was only white. Well, except for the piece of land that my parents owned out behind their home. Of course, in the enclosure, there were plenty of trees and grass, but everything was frozen over, and it came to my attention that I was wandering barefoot in the snow. The trudging became more and more difficult, like I was struggling on a treadmill with the slope raised to the maximum setting. As I headed toward the only landmark that I knew of, the creek that split the woodland side of the field from the side that eventually ran into train tracks, sometimes I would start to feel as if I were sinking into the snow, like the earth had opened up and was trying to pull me in. But then I would be on normal ground again. As I approached the creek, the outline of a person began to form just on the opposite bank, and I fought through the snow to reach my new beacon of hope. I was so warm with relief that the snow probably should have melted beneath my feet. Well, at least until I was standing before the shape. At first, I squeezed my eyes and kept repeating to myself that I wasn't seeing what was in front of me. But then they were wide open, and I could not close them, and something was forcing me to look upon the figure across from me. I saw myself, but I wasn't me. I was the white swan, and on the other side of the creek was my insidious counterpart. The black swan, her matching clothing was sheer black, and her malevolent eyes stood out from the smoky black makeup around them. Her grin was so hideous, but on me in the sense that it seemed far too large for her face. She was eyeing me, taunting me, and in that moment I realized that she knew something I didn't. Down there, the voice that escaped her lips wasn't what I was expecting to hear. It sounded more like soulless and monotone than something intimidating like evil. Sent chills down my spine nonetheless. Her finger pointed below at the creek that separated us. Her limbs finally moving independently of mine. My twin's movements were quick and stop-motion-like, and watching her felt like watching a clockwork doll. I quickly became aware of an increasing fear inside of me, and I immediately knew what it was that I was afraid of. I could not, let myself look down into that creek, because every fiber, every cell in my body was screaming. There was something abhorrent at my feet, and I would surely go insane if I even so much as glanced at it. But once again, I was not in control of myself. The black swan was forcing me to look upon my end. I did all I could to withstand her, but it wasn't enough. And then I saw them beneath the solidified surface of the creek were thousands of petrified, mangled bodies, the sea of corpses expanding in both directions. As far as I could see, I recognized so many of them. The one just at my feet being my boyfriend, my family and friends surrounding him. I was so terror-stricken that I couldn't look away, but the question that kept repeating itself in my mind finally came out. Who did this? There was a long silence, and it felt as though forever had passed before my reflection answered at last. Suddenly, my heart stopped and I was gasping for air because there was none. Why, you did? Then I came to, and I was leaning against the windowsill, gazing out of the big glass panes of my living room and into the dark front yard. Everything was as it should have been. The house as normal as always. The neighbors' houses visible across the street. The moon hanging ominously in the sky. Why I was standing in the living room in the middle of the night, I couldn't be sure, but I was more than relieved to be back in the real world. Shrugging off everything I had previously seen and felt as a bad dream, I sauntered back to my bedroom and made myself comfortable between the sheets. It didn't take long at all for me to drift back to sleep. I woke up to the feeling of my body, trembling uncontrollably, and all I could see before me was darkness until my eyes finally adjusted. The familiar field stretched before me, but nothing was snowy or icy or white. It was just dark, and the bitter wind was whipping my hair around and cutting right through my tank top and panties. It took a moment or two for me to become fully aware of my surroundings, but when I had absorbed it all, I had to stop myself from having a panic attack. I was standing half-dressed and barefoot in the grass and dead leaves, about 100 yards away from the creek on my parents' property. I did submit this story a week or two ago, but when I came back to my laptop, after leaving it sitting on the couch in the lounge next to the laundry room in my dorm's basement, and I only left it there for about 20 minutes, the post had been deleted and I was logged out of Reddit. Someone apparently didn't want me talking about my nightmares. Credit to Obscure Array Umbra. Found Honor No Sleep. The third story. Religion of the 21st Century. A historical study of the pre-Renaissance society of the 21st Street century. Since adolescence, I have had a fascination with history. especially the mysterious dark ages of the early centuries of the second millennium. Since the last wars and the period of Reconstruction, a great deal of knowledge concerning those ancient times has been lost. It has only been in recent decades that a few curious inquirers, such as myself, have been able to sift through the artifacts of the old world and what remains of its documentation to discern what life was like in those days. It is with great excitement and curiosity that I submit this document to our archives, describing my most recent discovery from the Dark Ages. It focuses on a peculiar religion that seemed to grow over time from prehistory to become a religion of the 21st century, leading up to and perhaps contributing to the collapse of society and the beginning of the darkness. The Dark Ages were ruled by clever, selfish individuals who misinformed their masses to manipulate them with fear and anger. Hatred and greed. Ignorance was the highlight of the beginning of the 21st century, when those who were in power wanted to remain there by utilizing innocent words and ideas like conservative notions and traditional ideas to keep people trapped where they wanted them. What began with the decay of the public education system and corruption of the mass media became an all-out war against science and progress. The power and all their power came from this one symbol, of this one idea, this religion that ruled them all. To fully understand this religion, you must first open your mind to the idea of a new form of worship, different from that of the better remembered spiritual beliefs. This 21st century religion was of a very different style and form, manifesting itself in strange, new ways like no religion to come before it. What little like and discern about this new religion comes most of all from the symbol I noticed in a great many documents. This symbol represents the idea that is central to this religion and can be found in articles regarding virtually every aspect of the ancient society of man. This new idol of worship was even influencing the other religions during its own rise to power. Living in that old, primitive society, one could not go through a day, much less a life, without having to think about this entity. It affected one's health, one's class and status, power and happiness. This icon shaped nations and communities, defined people's lives, sometimes granting them unimaginable power, other times ruining them. I greatly enjoy my time working in the fields, contributing to the collective, but I find greater pleasure in my free time when I can study subjects that interest me. I am fascinated by the old world system of work. It appears from other, more professional studies that in the Dark Ages and before, people would strive to work at different occupations in order to earn a better living. Today we share everything, and no one goes wanting. But in those days, based on how much favor one managed to incur with their all-encompassing God, you could have all the material possessions available to be taken, or you could be detained in what was called a prison. A family might idle on a beach in perpetual holiday, or toil until their premature deaths simply in order to keep themselves fed and sheltered. It was all up to this religion everyone believed in. Based on some documents containing the religion symbol, I have determined that there were even priests of this religion, huge hierarchies of devotees whose whole lives were dedicated to the growth, gospel, and control of this religious powerhouse. These priests organized themselves into many factions, separated into competing sects, and they built churches and temples to worship in, tall, soaring towers that competed to stretch higher into the heavens. Some people tried to go through life without worshipping this godhead, and most of them suffered for it. Others fought and killed one another for the idol, and usually it was the masters of these warriors who accumulated the favor of their god. Even as religious fanatics of other spiritual beliefs killed one another and themselves for their honor of their gods, they all had this one other religion in common. This wildly powerful belief took on many names, and its symbol changed depending on where you lived in the world. But it all meant the same thing. Everyone knew what it was and feared the power it held. This religion was the most real, life-changing belief known to man. This God touched everyone's lives every single day, though in reality it was all based on an abstract idea, a value given to people, places and things, infused in special metal objects and scraps of paper. Those papers, those objects all defined the entire world in that old society, because people let them. It was all in their heads, every single person, buying into the belief, allowing themselves to be part of the same cult, the same imaginary spiritual conspiracy. They had temples they called offices, sects known as businesses, high-ranking priests with titles like executives and bosses, collecting tail muslims called dollars and coins. People tried to gain favor with the higher power, but after the period of Reconstruction it was all forgotten, or nearly. There are just a few scraps of the old world left for us to study, so we can still try and understand how those simple-minded, selfish, pitiful people could allow mere idea and innobe, greedy, and just idea that ruled their entire lives, their whole world, the symbol that they used to represent their God, their religion, at least in one great empire of the old world, was this.